We're just going to be difficult. That work? Yes. Do you see the slides, folks?
Yes, we do.
Oh, good. All right.
Screen, not in presentation mode yet, but that's your choice.
Well, no, now I will get there. There we go.
Excellent.
All right. And I'm going to start. Good evening again, and welcome to the New York Coalition of Climate Chapter, Climate Reality Chapters. This meeting is hosted by the Hudson Valley Catskill Chapter today, and we are going to have a very excellent presentation. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that the Hudson Valley Catskills Climate Reality Chapter operates on the traditional territory of the Munsee Lenape, the Skycook, I can never say that, and the Wappinger tribes. And the New York State Coalition of Climate Reality Chapters includes these and also the lands of many more people, including the Erie, Lenni Lenape, the Mohican, Seneca, Susquehannock, and Tuscarora tribes. Okay. So tonight we have this very, very special presentation. Our Climate Moment campaign in New York has put together an excellent series of materials that can be used for tabling and can really present the case for electrification for your own home and for others in your neighborhood. And following the presentation, an overview of these materials that have been developed by the New York State Coalition, our Climate Moment group. Each local chapter will hold a breakout meeting to discuss the implementation of the training within their own region. You'll be able to choose your breakout session to decide you want to go visit another chapter or stay with your own. A recording of tonight's main session will be made available as soon as its link is generated, and that link probably to a YouTube channel by the New York City chapter will be posted on the New York Coalition Climate Reality site. There will also be a schedule of upcoming additional sessions and office hours if you should need assistance with the materials. It'll be there with the link. Okay. The tabling materials were developed by the our Climate Moment Working Group of the New York State Coalition. And all of these people, I think pretty much are here tonight: Laura Falk, Paul Fisk, Anshel Gupta, Tom Hirasuna, Annette Hogan, Robert Irizarry, Bob Jacobs, Paul Kiesler, who's the chair, Eve Morgenstern, Nicole Morris McLaughlin, Maura McNulty, Teresa Naida, Tom Polton, Deepa Prasad, Susie Ross, Lynn Saxton, Diane Stefani, and Fred Ross. So the agenda for tonight is that the resources for presenters tabling will be discussed and presented for you. You'll get tips for tabling at various events. And then the main focus of this is savings, health, and comfort. Tips for presenters and tips to finding audiences will be presented. There'll be an opportunity for questions. You'll have a wrap up, and then chapter breakouts will occur so you can discuss the rollout in regions. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Paul Kiesler.
There we go. I just unmuted myself. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful summer evening. And I'd also like to thank those 16 folks who were just listed. We went through a process of what was originally a 4-week process, which turned into an 8-week process to prepare everything you're going to see today. And it was a grueling process, to be honest, but we got a lot of great outputs from that. And the team was held together and was just super and really bonded very well over that period of time. So I want to thank everybody who was involved in that process. And Deepa, if you could put up the presentation, that would be great. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank everyone else who's on the call tonight, because you're taking part of your beautiful summer evening to join us, and we appreciate that. The purpose of my presentation tonight is to explain how to effectively present this presentation. But the purpose of the presentation itself is to explain how to use federal, state, and utility incentives to electrify your home and your transport, as well as to supply those needs with clean, renewable electricity. In the process, you will save money on the purchase and running of the required equipment, as well as make your home more comfortable and healthier, thus the title of the presentation. This we consider a perfect trifecta of benefits. And for those of you who have come for this second purpose, which is to learn about the incentives themselves, how to electrify, we won't be going through all of those details tonight, but you will get a great overview of the programs, and you'll get this presentation, which includes all of the details. So just wanted to put that out there. And our hope is that you will all join us to become electrification educators to help others make this transition. And this is an important calling, we think, because as the quicker we electrify everything with renewable electricity, the quicker we stop polluting the air and boiling our planet. So in addition to that, the purchase of every electric vehicle that we make, or electric device or heat pump or whatever else, helps the manufacturers of those items drive down the cost of the next one. And eventually we'll have electrification will become the standard in all homes and transport, not the exception. So please join us in this effort. Stay for the breakout sessions at the end of the meeting, where we'll plan our next steps. So moving on to the presentation, let's move to the second page, Deepa, please. Thank you. It's really critical to understand why people are here or in a presentation. And that's why we have this page. Most likely they're here because they're curious or they have a specific question, but don't know how to get started. So success for us is to get the participants from curious to prepared, or to answer their specific questions. And this is success because this will lead us to new conversions from fossil fuels. And that's why we have this page. And if you're in person, you should ask this question and ask people to share their answers. If there's a blackboard or a flip chart handy, I would write them down so that you can confirm at the end of the presentation that you answered their questions or their concerns. So this is a really interactive page. Moving on to the next page, we have the goals of our presentation, which you should go through and let them know that they will get a copy of the presentation. And this will put people at ease. They can stop stressing about it, put their pens down, and so on. And then on the next page, the intent of this page is to demonstrate why we need to act urgently. And I think if people need reasons to act urgently, then they're not very aware. But if they're not aware, this is really a really comprehensive list of reasons why we should act urgently. This is an optional page, and it depends on your audience. If you feel that your specific audience will react negatively to this page, I would recommend you skip it and just hook them on the financial savings and the other benefits. There's plenty there, and not get stuck on this. So on the next page, this is really the cornerstone page. It shows the 11 ways to electrify your home, transport, and how to get clean, renewable energy. So the yellow on the left designates the home, the blue is transport, and red is electricity. And the numbering is how we'll go through the rest of the presentation. We put community solar first because this is something that everyone can do today, whether or not, whether you rent or own your home or condo, unless you have residential solar already. So it costs nothing to do community solar and you save a lot of money. So we'll go into that later, but that's why we put that one red piece first. And by the way, there's another important point here, which is that we call this the 11 ways, not the 11 steps, because there's not really a prescribed order of doing these things. This all depends on the individual circumstances. So moving on to the next page, this page demonstrates to the participants that this transition is not about sacrifice, right? It's anything but that, honestly. Every fossil fuel swap out we discuss will either save money, be safer, make your life more comfortable, or just be better in any myriad of other ways. And if this is where you should start to bring in what people talked about earlier and the reasons why they're here. If they highlighted that they want to change a certain piece of equipment, and that was maybe a topic that several people talked about, you should go through the benefits associated with that equipment. To drain this whole page would be time consuming, but you should definitely touch on the points that people are interested in. On the next page, it also, this is the other piece of the puzzle. Deepa, if you could just move to the next page for a second. Yeah, thank you. This purpose of this page is to demonstrate that you'll also save money. Aside from having things be better, you also save money on all these fossil fuel swap outs. The one potential exception is space heating with heat pumps under certain rather rare circumstances, such as switching out gas where it's very cheap and where electricity is very expensive. This isn't the case all that often, and people can determine it using that calculator that we have highlighted there. So of course you can reduce the cost of the electricity by going with your own residential solar or with community solar. And so when you get your electricity costs down to 8 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour by going with residential solar, pretty much everything is going to be cheaper electric than any other fossil fuel. So moving on to the next page. This page, I'm going to test everyone later about different cells and see if they can remember the facts in each of these different cells. So please, no, I'm joking. This page actually lists all of the incentives available to New Yorkers. And so I'm going to just go through how the page works. The blue part describes federal incentives, and then the green part describes New York and the New York utility incentives. And as you go down the page, we use the same color coding and numeration as we had on that 11 ways page earlier. So in each cell is the detail of the rebate or the tax credit available. And so I recommend that you just go through one example to show how it works, but not to go through all of the details. So for instance, with geothermal heat pumps, you see a very, what you would get in terms of benefits incentives is a federal tax credit of 30%, which is uncapped. And then at the state level, you would get a 25% tax credit, which is capped at a maximum of $5,000. So on projects over $20,000, you would get $5,000. And then there's also clean heat rebates provided by the utilities, and those depend on the utility and the circumstances involved. So that would be an example of how you could explain one of those. And I would recommend that you limit yourself to the ones that people are interested in, but I wouldn't present them on this page at all. This page is just to say that it's here and you can come back to that because you'll be going through all of these details in the rest of the presentation. So moving to the next page, page 9, this introduces our planning process. And the planning process of how to go through it, because you saw there was a lot of details. There's 11 ways to do this. So you need to plan that out. And so that's the planning process. Starts with getting an energy audit, then listing all of your fossil fuel equipment and weatherization steps that came from that, that audit. And then you plan for each item, what you would do. And then you have to prioritize those actions based on your individual circumstances. So if you move to the next page, Deepa, please, you'll see a very handy planning worksheet that helps you to, go through this whole process. So if you're presenting this in person, I really would recommend that you hand this page out, you print it out and hand it to everybody so that they can fill it out during the presentation. Or if it's a virtual presentation, you may want to send this page in advance so that they can, start filling it out and get ready for the meeting and then use it during the meeting. And we'll come back to this at the end because this is, how you plan to do all the actions. On the next page, it describes details about the incentives, and it should be drained fully because the tax credits and rebate programs are complicated. So the participants should really not only understand all these details, but should verify any financial decisions which depend on these incentives with their tax preparer or the tax authority. And that is included in that very important disclaimer at the bottom, which should be read. When we move to the next page, you see the question about electric service, panels and wiring, and whether work needs to be done in your house, and if it's a precursor for doing other steps or other ways, then how best to do it. So you can see, it asks the question, do I need more service? Tips to avoid getting more service, and a way to answer whether you should pre-wire certain things. So I wouldn't go on in a lot of deep detail on that page, and it's important to keep this page in context because it's a big deal It's not a big deal for many homes. For many homes, it's fine. You'll just have some incremental electric costs as you go along. For other homes, it can be quite considerable, but there are incentives for that, which are listed on the next page. So I think it's really important to keep that discussion, not to conflate that discussion into something where people don't want to act. Then here we go. Now we're starting with the first ways, way 2 and way 3, which are weatherization and electrical upgrades. And here you should explain that federal tax credits are available. Rebates will be available primarily, but not exclusively, for low and moderate income households. And I also want to pause here to reflect a little bit on how much time you should spend on each page. I think it's important to introduce all the topics because the participants might not have thought about all of them. So you need to at least show all the pages, I think. But it's also important to spend the most time on the topics where the participants expressed interest in. And based on the poll results, you might want to go deeper on this page or on any other page in the presentation. So that's a little tidbit I wanted to throw in before moving to page 14. And on page 14, weatherization is a great example of where we have significant programs in New York. We're lucky to live here in this regard. And all of these programs layer on top of the US incentives I mentioned on the previous page. So here you might want to just highlight the tools available for determining eligibility, which is in the that New York Energy Advisor and these little hyperlinks. And mention that they can, but I wouldn't go through all these programs on this page because we're going to go through them on the next pages. So on page 15, you can see the New York REAP program, our Residential Energy Assessment Program. This program provides folks with free audits that are critical to highlight issues and help participants decide their next steps. So many folks start with clear ideas of what they need to do. And then when they get this audit, they change their mind, they change their perceptions. So this is a really good first step to this whole process. And we encourage everyone to take this one. On page 16, you see what's called the Comfort Home Program. It's available to all New Yorkers, no matter your income level, and it's for weatherization projects. It also has a consultation by an insulation contractor that is not as thorough as the REAP audit, but it is a small audit. On the next page, we discuss the Assisted Home Performance Program, which is an income-tested program that provides deep discounts to owners, renters, and landlords to address energy efficiency improvements. And on page 18, you have the Empower New York program. This is another income-tested program that provides very, very deep discounts for both weatherization and energy efficiency. And it can help low-income owners and renters weatherize and electrify their home at a nominal cost or even for free. And then they'll save money ongoing and enjoy a much more comfortable home. So this is a really powerful program. It's quite complicated to get in, but it's very powerful. And on the next page, you can see that Con Ed and PSEG Long Island have some programs that you would want to talk about if you're presenting in the city or on Long Island. Otherwise, you can just delete this page. Moving to the next page, this is a concise heat pump fact sheet that explains the ways that heat pumps work and a few salient facts, and go as deep as the audience needs to, but don't forget to mention a few critical things. And the first is that heat pumps do both heating and cooling. So when they're comparing this to replacing their furnace, they need to also compare it to replacing their air conditioning system. And if they don't have air conditioning system, I think the last few smoke storms or whatever we call them that we've had prove that people really should be trying to get air conditioning if they can afford it. So heat pumps are really, they do both. They both heat and cool. They're much more efficient. Secondly, they're much more efficient than other heating systems because they just move heat, they don't create it. And the other third point that you hear a lot, and we need to dispel this myth, is that new models work well in cold climates. It's proven by their popularity in Maine and Norway. So these are some key points that you want to highlight on this page. And then moving to the next page, we're moving actually to the ways 4 and 5, which are space and water heating. And geothermal heat pumps can do both space and water heating. And geothermal qualifies for huge discounts at the US, New York, and utility level, as I mentioned before. But it is very expensive. So it's also more efficient than air source heat pumps, and it can last for up to 100 years. So you really should encourage people the participants in the presentations, that they should at least get a quote so they find out, what the situation is with geothermal and whether that's appropriate for them. Then on the next page, we discuss air source heat pumps, which are the alternative to geothermal air source heat pumps. And they do obviously space heating and cooling. And aside from the federal tax credits and rebates, there is a New York Clean Heat program that provides really generous incentives that can be more impactful actually than the tax credits. And they layer on top. These incentives are significantly larger if you replace a fossil fuel system than if you just add a second heating system. You know, this as a backup or a partial installation. So that's air source heat pumps. And then moving to the next page, we're talking about the air source water heaters. And again, way number 5. Doing this project is super, super easy and typically has a very quick payback, as there are generous federal tax credits and rebates, and there's the New York utility incentives. So I would highlight here just that participants should get the proper outlet wired near where they're going to put this in advance, because you know when as no one wants to wait for a couple of days for a hot shower in the middle of the winter when the water stops working. So that's a key point to raise at this page. Then moving on to the next page, appliances. This is a critical page as well, primarily because after space and water heating, clothes drying, and cooking are the main uses of fossil fuels in homes. Also because they create noxious fumes that are trapped in your home and cause health damages. And by changing these appliances, you can actually, what's really critical is you can cut off your gas supply and stop paying the monthly service charge. So, you know, if that's $20 a month or whatever, that's, you know, $240 a year. So, you know, if they cost an extra couple $100, you can sometimes make back that money just by not getting gas service anymore. So that's important. There are no tax credits for appliances, but there are rebates for low and moderate income households. And then on page, by the way, on low and moderate income households, there's a description of what that is in the backup for all of the 15 HUD regions in New York State. So you'll be able to insert the right page in the presentation that will describe to people what low and moderate income households means for federal and state programs. Then on page 25, this page, you have highlights a few more programs. NYSERDA has some financing options available, which are you can find with that hyperlink. And then demand response programs pay you to adjust your thermostat at peak hours to help the utility manage electricity demand. Fair warning on this, the sums are pretty small, but the cumulative impact can help the utility avoid blackouts in starting a peaker plant. So there's some advantages to that. And then these utility marketplaces have energy efficient appliances for sale. One thing I want to highlight on this page is that we use hyperlinks, and there's a lot of them on this page throughout the presentation. So when you get the PDF version, you'll be able to click on those and it'll take you directly to the site with all the details, with, you know, so that you can action these steps. If we go to the next page, most New York utilities actually have a partnership with a company called Sealed, and that finances weatherization and or heat pumps installation. As the company won't do a project without making a profit, they will be taking part of your benefits. But for that, they will pay and organize the work. And so it may be a good option for those who are okay with this trade-off. So that you can find the details on this on all of your utility websites. Moving to page 27, this is a really important point because you really need to get the right contractors, as I've seen from so many anecdotes. Many contractors are unaware or skeptical of the technologies and are unaware of the incentives available, and will try to steer you to what they have in the back of their truck or in their stock, which is fossil fuel equipment, which they've been doing for the past 30 years. So you really need to get the right contractor and don't let them steer you the wrong way. Someone told me once that the hot water coming from a gas water heater is better than that from a heat pump water heater, which was kind of comical. Anyway, so on the next page, we're now moving, we've covered all of the areas on the home piece, and now we're moving to the blue piece, the transportation section. And it's important to highlight here that when we make transportation decisions every day, it's far better to walk or take a bike or use public transport than to drive any vehicle. For those of you who live in areas that require a car, you should highlight the benefits here of EVs versus internal combustion engine vehicles. And then on the next page, you can see there are really robust tax credits for new and now used vehicles. And there's also tax credits for EV chargers in rural and low-income communities. Some of these are going to be turning into, actually all the EV incentives are going to be turning into rebates on discounts at the dealer in the near future. So that'll make this a lot easier. You won't need to have a tax liability to access those. On the next page, it shows that New York State also offers rebates for new EVs. So when combined with the US tax credits, you can knock up to $9,500 off the bill. And this can make a Chevy Bolt cost less than $20,000. So, you know, who said that EVs are only for the wealthy? That's a talking point of, you know, the naysayers. So it's, you know, you can't find many cars under new cars under $20,000 these days. So there's another big point on this page, which is that utilities offer time of use rates, which are oftentimes like, you know, after midnight, let's say before the morning. If you charge your car at those times, you will pay orders of magnitude less than if you charge them during the day. So that makes the fueling of that vehicle really, really cheap. So you need to sign up for those. And you get 10% off Easy Pass. Okay, on the next page, we're now switching from transportation to the source of your electricity. And the once your home and transport are electric, the next step is actually fueling them with renewable energy. And getting residential solar in New York is super, super cheap. The incentives can be anywhere from 50 to 60% of the total bill. And in fact, the national average payback period is about 8.7 years. And then you enjoy free electricity for the next 2 decades. And in New York, with these extra incentives of 25% capped at 5,000 and this NYSERDA program, your payback can be as low as 6 to 7 years, which is my personal experience. And it's the equivalent, and I see that what people are getting. I'm helping some people right now, and their paybacks are getting even lower because the prices have come down since I did it. So that's really an important, you know, step, is to go solar. And then if you move to the next page, Deepa, if you can't put solar on your roof or in your yard, then the next best thing is to get is to get community solar. And everyone can do this. Everyone on the call tonight can do this unless you already have residential solar. And what happens is community solar is when a company builds solar on your behalf somewhere in the utility territory. They sell the electricity to your utility, who gives you a credit on your bill. Then you pay the community solar company with a 5 to 10% discount off of the utility rate. So you're getting real solar and you're getting a discount on it. So there's zero reasons why not to do this, other than you already have your own solar array on your roof. And you can find the programs by clicking on the links in here specifically for your utility. One note here is that it is better to install residential solar if you can. The financial savings of residential solar are far greater than community solar, and it improves grid resiliency dramatically because you're creating your own electricity at the source and not impacting the grid so much. So this is the preferred option. Okay, so we're now done explaining all the incentives available, and now I'm going to move on to how renters and condo and co-op owners can also participate in the action. And the first point to mention here is that renters can access all the transport and solar incentives that are highlighted here. Okay, so that's a big piece, right? And this, and then when you talk about the home incentives, renters can't do everything, right? Because they can't make all the decisions about, you know, their heating and the heating of the air and the water in their home, their dwellings. So what can they do? They can urge their landlords to take advantage of the incentives available, which are available to them as well. And especially for space and water heating. And in addition, there are portable options of everything that renters can buy, such as induction hot plates, which cost less than $100, and window heat pumps, and things like that. So there are a lot that renters can do, and shouldn't feel, you know, disabled from taking advantage of all of this. On the next page, the situation for condo and co-op owners is pretty similar. They also can, you know, power their car and their solar. So that's all fine. And in terms of their home, in some cases, they can change their stoves, their air conditioning, and their clothes dryers in their units. That's what I was able to do in my co-op, condo. And but they also but like when it comes to other things like especially when it comes to space and water heating, they need to work with the condo or the co-op board owners board. And one great option available for those individuals is to join the co-op or the condo board and agitate for action within. And if the building is in New York City and large enough, it is subject to local law 97, which puts them under a significant amount of pressure to decrease their carbon emissions or face large fines. And while most buildings are on track to hit the 2025 targets, most are also far behind on their 2030 targets. So now is the time to join the board and raise the pressure to act. Okay, on the next page, just wanted this is the conclusion. We've now concluded the presentation, and it's time to wrap up with 3 main points. And the first is to remind folks that this transformation is a great way to save money, both when you replace the fossil fuel equipment and then when you run it. It's also a great way to enjoy many benefits of comfort, improved health and safety benefits, and other performance benefits as well. The next step is to ask the participants if they have any questions about the planning worksheets that we referred to earlier, and try to work through any questions that they have remaining so they can take action right away. And the last point is you want to ask them to take another poll using the 11 ways and ask them to raise their hands if it's in person or to vote online using a polling function to choose what action they plan to take first. And this is a great way to help people commit out loud, which has been shown to lead to much more action. So that's the conclusion. And then on the next page, we highlight resources and support organizations available. The ones listed here are for this in New York City, but we have the list for other regions, and they should be inserted here before your event. And on the next page, we end up by asking the participants if they want to join the Climate Reality Project. I think all of us here would say that that's a great thing to do, or to join our training, or to join this Electrification Educator project themselves. Last, we thank them for coming and for taking action to halt climate change. And we remind them that with the passage of the IRA, individuals are in the driver's seat. We're in the driver's seat now. Our collective success depends on hundreds of millions of actions to electrify fossil fuel machines. And as we've pointed out, this is not a burden or a cost. We'll enjoy savings, better comfort, improved health outcomes, and a myriad of other performance benefits. So it's time to get rid of your horse and buggy and join us. All right, with that, I think I'm within my 20 minutes, I hope so. And I'm gonna now pass it over to Deepa Prasad, who's gonna take us through the tabling materials.
Okay, sorry for that. Thanks, Paul. Just give me a second and I'll share my screen again. Just gotta bring up the presentation. And
thank you, Deepa, for advancing the slides for me. That took a little bit of pressure off.
No problem. Okay. All right. So good evening, everyone. Just great to have you all joining us this evening. My name is Deepa Prasad. I'm a member of the New York City Metro chapter, and I'll be going over the New York OCM, or Our Climate Moment, tabling materials, which is a toolkit of materials to help you in your electrification education efforts. So the purpose of these materials is to provide visuals and information that will help you engage community members in a conversation. The materials will help you explain the available IRA, New York, and utility incentives for improving home efficiency, electrifying homes and transport, which can lower your energy costs while making your home healthier and more comfortable. These materials will also help you educate consumers on the benefits of various electric technologies and how they work. And you can use these materials to provide resources to help consumers take advantage of the incentives, to begin electrifying their homes and transportation, or to at least start thinking about it. And don't worry if you're not an expert on all of this, you don't need to be. We are all learning as we go. And really, I think the most important thing is to inform people that these incentives are available and to get them to start thinking about this process. In the picture on the right, you can see a couple of our very own climate reality leaders, Luca and Diane, along with their friend from the Cornell Cooperative Extension, tabling at a local event. And so these materials are designed for use at community events like these. So we have various types of materials that help you through the various steps in tabling. First, you want to draw people to your table. After you've set your table up, you want to draw them to you. So here's one of our materials. This Ask Me How page will hopefully draw people in by stating that they can save money, be more energy efficient, have a more comfortable home, and so on. Who doesn't want these things, right? So you can print this out and include it as part of your table display to help draw people in. Here's another one of our materials, promoting free energy audits available to any homeowner. This can be attractive to passersby. So homeowners can get a free energy audit, which is a really important step in making a plan to electrify your home's heating and cooling and improve its efficiency. This page draws attention to the three uncles, Uncle Ira, Uncle Bill, and Uncle Chip, or you might not know them better as the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the US CHIPS and Science Act. So because of the three uncles, we have a historic transformational investment in clean energy, electrification, American infrastructure, and jobs. And New York State has made significant investments in these areas as well. So we really want to make people aware that this is a historic moment and we want to make the most of it. So you may have noticed that we haven't said much, or I haven't said much about climate so far. Paul talked about it a little, but we don't really need people to care about the climate crisis in order to make these changes. Everybody has to replace their appliances and systems from time to time. We really want to emphasize the savings that they'll experience from the incentives and that their homes will be healthier and more comfortable. However, if you do have a climate-friendly audience, you might want to show something like this at your table. As you can see, buildings, transportation, and electricity are the three biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions in New York. And the IRA, New York, and utility incentives help to reduce emissions in these areas. So once you get people to come to your table, we have some tips on how to engage them in a conversation. I won't go into all the detail here, but this page offers lots of tabling tips, including how to find venues, tailoring for your audience, preparing for the weather, but also what kind of questions to ask to start a conversation. Sometimes the hardest part is to start that conversation. So in addition to this page, we also have a conversation guide with a sample script to help engage people. And then finally, on this page, we have tips on what to send people off with after you've had a conversation with them. Here we have images showing different examples of table displays. So on the left, you'll see a couple of photos of a model house illustrating all the ways homes can be electrified. And this was created using a dollhouse, but you can certainly use a cardboard model or even a picture of a house or a diagram like the one you see on the bottom right. And this can become a really great conversation piece and helps people to visualize the changes they might make in their own home. At the top right, there's an example of a trifold board display, like you might see at a science fair, where you can paste information and visuals for people to peruse. It might be hard to see, but this one has the three uncles visual that I showed you earlier, the home energy audit, and the Ask Me How document. I've been told that the trifold board by itself doesn't seem to work well outdoors, especially if it's windy. So you might want to use a sign holder or try other displays like a binder to flip through or an easel to hold your display. We also have printable visuals for your table to help familiarize people with the different ways to electrify. So here's just one example. This one is on air source heat pumps. I'm not going to go into detail here, but just to give you an idea of the materials that we have. This is a two-pager. One page describes in fairly simple terms how air source heat pumps work. And then the next page talks about the various benefits and maybe some little known facts about them. And others follow the same model. This one is on heat pump water heaters. again, this page describes how they work. And then this page goes over some benefits and facts about heat pump water heaters. And here's one on electric vehicles. And you'll have a chance to look at all of these. We will provide a link so you can look at all of the materials in closer detail, but I don't want to spend too much time going through them in detail right now. And here's the second page of the EV visual. We have several more of these, including ones on heat pump dryers, induction cooktops, and ground source heat pumps. We also have some planning tools to help people start thinking about how they would go about making these changes. So Paul had this in his presentation as well, but this is something that you can print out and display at your table as well. Federal and New York incentives put together are quite significant, so we're pretty lucky here in New York, and knowing what the incentives are can really help people figure out how to best take advantage of them and what works best for their particular situation. Paul also went over this worksheet. Same thing, you can use it at your table just like you would during your presentation. And then there's also this 3-step electrification guide that breaks the process down into 3 major parts. 1, making your home more comfortable and reducing your energy bills by insulating. 2, electrifying everything and improving the efficiency of your appliances and vehicles. And 3, powering your home with renewable energy and saving money on your electric bills. And on this document, there are various links here to the wealth of resources that are available from different organizations such as Climate Reality, NYSERDA, and Rewiring America. And finally, we have handouts, but we don't have a lot of them. Being Climate Reality, we wanted to minimize the amount of printed material that we give out. So we created a business card with a QR code and a bit.ly link that directs people to a 2-page document with links to helpful resources. So the QR code, you can bring up the document on your phone, but we also provided the bit.ly link so people can open this up on their computer. I think most of the chapters have some of these cards, but your chapter can take these PNG images and print more of these fairly cheaply. The other resources can also be printed and distributed, but in the interest of reducing waste and not overwhelming people with too many things, we focused on this card as a handout. But definitely when you're tabling, you can figure out what works best for you. So now you're all ready to start working on presenting and tabling, right? Here's how to access these materials. Everything is saved in a folder on the New York State Coalition's Google Drive. But navigating all the files in the folder can be a bit confusing, so we've created a Google Doc that serves as an index of links to help you find all the materials. So Paul is going to drop that link into the chat. Once you have that, you will have access to everything, the presentation, the materials. You can peruse everything, review everything. You can feel free to download the materials to your hard drive or make a copy to your own Google Drive. However, we will be updating these materials periodically. So it's really important to check and make sure you have the most current version. And if you have any trouble accessing materials, you can email me at deepany@gmail.com. So I want to give a big thank you to all the members of the presentation and tabling groups. I had a great time working with all of you, and I think our group has done a really great job pulling all these materials together. But we also acknowledge that there's always room for improvement and updates. So if you have corrections or suggestions for improving the slides or tabling materials, you can submit them using our OCM presentation and tabling materials change recommendation form. The link to that is in the index document that Paul shared the link to. And our presentations review team is meeting on a monthly basis for now. And we will be discussing how best to incorporate your feedback into our slides. Our tabling team will also be meeting periodically to update our materials as needed. And finally, I just want to wish you all luck with your electrification education efforts, whether it's a slide presentation you're giving, tabling, or just even a conversation with your network. I wish you lots of luck with that. But I just want to reemphasize, I think the most important thing is to inform people that these incentives exist, they're available, and to get them to start thinking about this process and maybe just take the first step. You don't have to be an expert. We're all learning as we go. And I think we're part of this big cultural shift that's going to be occurring. So don't be intimidated, you can do it, and good luck. And that's it. So thank you. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tom.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to take care of a few administrative items before we turn you over to your chapters. We hope that it's been informative. I hope it's been inspiring as well. This was a great chance for you to learn more about it and hopefully become part of the overall effort. So just a couple of administrative aspects to this. Hopefully you were inspired to become a presenter, but we understand that that can be a little intimidating to begin with. We do need outreach leaders. We do need folks that can help connect with organizations in your area. That you may be great at that. You may feel more comfortable just working on recruiting organizations to be part of our overall effort. There are tools for that provided by the Climate Reality, a power mapping tool that helps to identify it. But I think that the way the presentation has been laid out and the way that Paul introduced it, hopefully you feel that you're good to go as a presenter too. And don't worry though, this isn't the end, and we'll highlight there's lots of follow-up efforts to help support you through becoming a presenter. And know as well that there are Energy Coach partners in your region. So you can introduce folks to this material, but there'll be other places for them to get resources as well. So just some guidance around the presentation. As Deepa highlighted, we know that there'll be things to correct. There may be links that may not be functioning properly, or you may have some feedback that you get from giving the presentations. There is this link to a form that we have that allows you to enter in your comments, and then they, as Deepa said, they will be reviewed and updated the presentations as needed. In addition, Climate Reality asks that you track your presentations so that they're aware as to how effective we are in our outreach efforts across the country. It's an important tip for them to know, and there's a link for that off of the Climate Reality. We do have these resources available, as Deepa highlighted, and that they're easy to get to, and hopefully there are a bunch that you can find that will help you in your upcoming tabling events or other organizational outreach efforts. It should be noted that we're only distributing PDF versions of the presentation. I'm sure that you're going to be asked, can I have a copy of the slides? We don't want it to be distributed as a PowerPoint. We're fine if it's distributed as a PDF. And lastly, as I say, this was just the start, not necessarily the end of our training efforts to get you comfortable with taking on these materials. We are planning some office hours in the upcoming weeks. On August 23rd, next Wednesday, from 6 to 7 in the evening, we will have chapter members available from across the coalition to help answer your questions and talk to you about what will about various aspects of the presentation that you may have questions about. And likewise, the following week on August 30th from 11 to noon, we're adding a session for daytime office hours to help fill you in and keep you comfortable. So I hope that you can make one of these two appointments if that's available to you. We're going to be looking into whether we want to do an additional statewide session similar to this, although this recording will be available, and it may be that we'll just focus on some lessons learned and frequently asked questions and supplement the actual overview of the presentation. But we're looking at October to do that, and we'll judge whether that's necessary based upon the feedback. But after that session as well, we will have additional office hours if we go ahead. So, and now I think we're pretty much on schedule. We may have some time for a couple of questions that may not have been answered in the chat, but we want that each chapter will be meeting after this to develop a rollout plan for your region. Identify a chapter member who can help champion the efforts, help be an outreach leader, as well as members who are interested in being presenters and work together to get familiar with the material. And then we encourage you to identify potential audiences and discuss that during your chapter meetings. And then to think about other local climate groups as well as energy coaches that may be available. There is a partners list that we're compiling as well that's available too on the G Drive site. And that's an important way to give more helpful one-on-one resources to attendees who come to your session. So that ends our overall presentation. We're glad you could make it. And let's, I think we have time maybe for a few questions before we do a breakout. I'll turn it over to Linda to coordinate the questions. I see one hand up.
There I am. Okay. Questions for any of the presenters that weren't, the chat was going all the whole way through, but any questions before we move to breakouts?
I think I see Fred with his hand up.
Fred, you're on mute.
I posted in the chat a couple of recent programs on the IRA that were on NPR. The one from today talked about the major problem is that I think that they had mentioned over $100 million has already been used, and it's being used by people of means, and that essentially the lower income people are not taking advantage of it because they don't know that it exists. So what we're doing is going to be extremely timely, and picking where we're going to have where and what audiences we are going to address is going to be absolutely critical if the people who need this the most are going to be able to take advantage of VIRA. And Tim, you're right about the congressional districts of hitting those congressional districts that are toss-ups right now, but we've also got to get this message out to deeply red congressional districts and counties across New York State. I was up in the Adirondacks for about 3 weeks in July, and it was disheartening to see the incredible support for a particular candidate who wants to enter the White House. And the people up there just generally think that anything that Biden is doing is not to be supported at all, even though it's going to save them thousands of dollars. They won't participate because of the politics that are involved. And that's going to be a hurdle that we're going to all have to face in some places where we may be giving presentations. So anybody's got solutions to that one, boy, tell them.
Hey, thanks, Fred. We should probably get to some of the
Okay,
other
Maura?
questions.
I saw in the chat, Susie, you put in a bit.ly to sign up for the open house hours. I just want to make sure people know how to go ahead and sign up to attend those open house hours. Could you just review that? And Tim, totally agree with you on the LOB.
Yeah, very quickly, in what I'll do is I'll put probably on the New York Coalition Reality Hub the links, so you don't have to copy them here, but basically save those 2 dates. It was the 23rd and the 30th. One was in the evening, one was in the daytime. And I will put, as I said, promo up, so everybody will, again, you don't have to capture it here. And we will potentially have some more upcoming office hours.
Thank you, Susie. Francesca?
Yeah, it's just to answer Fred's question. The incentives for low and moderate income people have not been operationalized yet. That's what's happening with all the clean energy hubs. The process is starting. They expect to be able to have, these are upfront rebates for people, and they are specifically not for wealthy people. They are for low and moderate income people, and they will be available. It's a certain limited pot of money. So they're hoping they will last 3 years, maybe more, depending on how many people sign up for them. So then the other type of incentive for wealthier people, or anybody who pays taxes, are based, and there are middle income people who pay taxes as well, and they could still get rebates up to a certain income. But if you are wealthier than that, then basically the pot is unlimited because it's a 30% tax tax rebate, there are no limits on that except for the time limits. They last for 10 years until 2032. So I don't think, we don't have to worry about the money for low and moderate income people to be running out. And if anyone can pay taxes, basically the money's unlimited.
Thank you. Kathy and Janet, Kathy first and then Janet, and I think we're out of time for questions after that.
I just wanted to get clarification on the open house hours. Are you really targeting those toward folks that are going to be doing presentations so that they can have questions answered before they do presentations? Or is it a general, let's get clarification again about the legislation?
You want me to take that, Tom?
Sure, I think it's largely for people who are going to be doing presentations, but if you have questions, you feel free to drop by and have it discussed. I mean, or for those folks tabling too. I mean, to go through the tabling materials too, but it's intended to reinforce the materials from the presentation.
Janet?
I get why you wouldn't want to talk as much about climate and just about getting the actions done. But I wonder if there's a way to, for instance, I'm not in Croton, but Croton has a calculator and it's a community calculator. And if people take these actions, maybe look into your town's lowering of their greenhouse gases, because these things need to be tracked in real time. And if people start taking these actions, the communities need to know that the municipalities need to know that people are taking these actions so they can record and know the difference between who's doing what, so that it's not actuarial data, so that it's actual data. And some municipalities do have carbon trackers. And I think it's important that we remember that we are climate reality for the people who are coming to it for that reason. Not exclusively, but that was my only thought.
Thank you. Renee, can we move to breakout rooms?
You betcha. Okay, we're gonna
Okay.
hope this works this time around. So there are 7 breakout rooms named for the 7 chapters in the New York State Coalition. Those rooms are now open. Should have just popped up on your screen. If not, at the bottom in the black portion of your Zoom window, if you mouse down there, you should see breakout rooms. And you can click to join whichever room is appropriate for you. Good, people are doing so. That's wonderful.
Renee, folks are coming back to this main room afterwards, or no?
Check with the leader in the breakout room. Like that deferral to other. All right, so the entry to breakout rooms was the close of our formal portion of this presentation. Hopefully you make fantastic use of all the resources that have been presented here, or contact some of the folks that were instrumental in creating it. Thanks for all the work you're doing to make this place a better world.